This is the xBloom. It's a machine that promises to take freshly roasted specialty whole bean coffee and turn it into a pod machine that not only grinds and brews, but apparently does so according to how the roaster intended. Basically, it's kind of promising to make perfect coffee, assuming your water recipe is nice as well. So today I'm going to go through an overview of this machine, talk about who it might be for, what it's been like using it, and if it lives up to its promise. But first, a few disclaimers. This machine was sent to me from the xBloom team, and while this review video is not sponsored, I have done some work with them in the past on their launch videos when I was over at Onyx Coffee Lab in Arkansas, and I am doing some work with them over on Instagram as well. That being said, I will review this machine fairly and point out all of its flaws or possible points of improvement that I've personally noticed and come across in my time using this machine. So with that being said, let's first talk about what this machine is and how it works. Like I mentioned, it's an automatic whole bean machine. You buy the pods that come in these compostable cups, which are lined with a filter, and it's also the brewer. Each pod comes with about 15 to 16 grams of beans. Underneath each pod is a little RFID chip that is programmed to tell the machine how fine to grind and also how to brew the beans in it. And each recipe is programmed to the beans itself by the roaster. That's pretty cool. So in theory, you should be getting your coffee brewed exactly as the roaster of the beans you're using intended, again, as long as your water recipe is good as well. So you tap the pod on the top of the machine, you pour the beans in, place it onto the brewer, onto the holder, push it down, and off it goes. The entire thing slides to the left while the machine grinds the beans into the cup. It then slides back to the right, and you can also see that depending on the recipe, it's going to vibrate to level out the bed and help with agitation before and during brewing. And then the brewing process begins, and there's a little stream of water that shoots downwards and even in little spirals. Now that, in combination with the vibrating platform, is essentially how your coffee gets brewed, in little pulses. When it's done brewing, the entire cup is compostable except for the little RFID chip. So that's a little bit about how it works. Now let's talk about the build quality before getting into whether or not this machine is actually successful at what it promises to do. This is a relatively small and lightweight machine. It takes up just a 7-inch by 8.5-inch deep footprint. It is on the taller side and it's a little bit taller than even something like my Lilique Bianca at about 14 inches tall, and additional headroom is going to be required to both tap your pods up there, pour the beans in, and also fill up your water reservoir. The machine, however, feels unsurprisingly like a MacBook. It's made of mostly aluminum parts that feel really nice and smooth with an even finish all around. The machine makes fantastic use of magnets too. The 750 milliliter water tank snaps into place nicely with magnets, and the holder for the brewer also does as well. Even the little grinder cover here snaps into place nicely using magnets. I'd say the machine can be broken down into three main parts. On the left, you have the advertised near zero retention grinder, which is a 48mm titanium nitride coated conical burr grinder with 20 automatic adjustment steps that was designed in part partially by Lance himself. And the grinder here works very well. On the right, you have the brewing portion, which spirals the water with the use of electrodes, I think. And basically there's nothing mechanical actually spinning, which is actually pretty cool to see. It also has a little LED light to help light up your brew. The brewer portion itself has a built-in scale, or so I've been told since you can't actually see anything, but it never overflows, so I think it is accurate. And then you've got the rear, which is where the water tank sits, and also this front panel, which is not functional, but is just meant to be sort of like an indicator of what's going on with your brew. There is also an accompanying app, but that is still in development, so I didn't want to include that for the full review. Overall, the build is very good, and despite its lightweight, it doesn't come off as cheap at all, and it shouldn't given it has an $800 MSRP price tag. But does it work? And I have to say that at this point in time, kind of. The pods I've been receiving for samples have no information other than the roaster, so I don't know if I'm getting consistently freshly roasted beans, but overall the beans have been just okay. Nothing spectacular, but also nothing particularly bad. I think once production is ramped up and the pods are properly packaged for sale with information on the roast date, flavor notes, etc., then it might possibly have a better result. Now, more often than not with the beans I've been receiving, the brews have felt a little under-extracted. Now, I think it could definitely grind a touch finer, and I believe the app is intended to help you do that if that is your preference. But the other issue I've been having is also just generally the machine's software. Sometimes the whole thing just kind of stops. Like it'll grind the beans, move under the water spout, and just stop and eventually turn off. And that's something that definitely needs to be fixed, and presumably will for a production run. But I have to consider that this machine at its price point for $800 is not an insignificant amount of money. So who is this machine for? And that's where it gets really confusing. If you're drinking and enjoying specialty coffee, presumably you are likely making it at home as well. And doing that is very inexpensive. You could just get a V60, a gooseneck kettle for like 50 bucks together, and have a huge budget left over for a really good grinder like the DF83, for example, for the same price as just one of these machines. And sure, it might take the guesswork out of it, but what is the fun in that? And for those already in specialty coffee, do you want something fully automated that takes the guesswork out of it like this? And are you willing to pay $800 for that? For me personally, I do enjoy the process of making my own coffee, and the ability to just whip out something like a Mocha Master, even for those lazier days, has produced much better results than I've gotten from the xBloom itself. And I have also been working with the xBloom marketing team on some video content for their own personal usage, but sometimes their prompts that they give me just rub me off the wrong way. If this is a machine intended to brew specialty coffee, aka traditionally light roasts, then why are you asking me to make a reel with milk and sugar in it? I don't think that's the target audience that this machine is seeking. At $800, I'm struggling to understand who this machine is for. It's simply far too expensive for any casual coffee drinker, especially if they're coming off of something like a Keurig, an espresso, or if they daily places like Dunkin' Donuts and Starbucks. And if this is targeting the specialty coffee audience, who's buying it, how are they buying it, and more importantly, why are they buying it when you can get great results for a fraction of the price, all while actually learning and understanding how your good coffee gets brewed? So, to conclude, it's not a bad machine. It's just priced very oddly in my opinion, and I do want to see the company establish themselves as thought leaders, especially with people like Lance Hedrick, Brian Kwan, and Scott Rayo working with them, rather than creating content like Irish coffee with a lightly roasted specialty coffee brew. That's just a little bit weird. Personally, I think there's a little bit of a disconnect between the marketing side to the rest of the company to establish where exactly this product needs to be placed in the market. And I think if they can drive that cost and price down a little bit, it might have a better chance at being successful in the long run. So anyways, those are going to be my thoughts on this machine. My honest opinion, wait on this one. Wait till production units are out, see what the coffee purchasing process is like, especially since right now I am just testing random unlabeled beans with no information. Until then, I hope you enjoyed this review. As always, don't forget to subscribe, like for more coffee content, and I'll see you in the next one.